Morning, everybody. It's a hard act to follow. I think Sarah had I would like to have the budget that she has to do all those things. I think you're being very modest. Anyway, many of you may know a little bit about our project. I'm a filmmaker who became very interested in archaeology kind of by default and wound up doing something that I never anticipated I would be doing. The name of my production company is Under the LiDAR Productions. We thought it was kind of a clever name. We'll leave it at that. Today I'm joined by two of my project colleagues, Dr. Juan Carlos Fernandez Diaz from the National Center of Airborne Laser Mapping and Dr. Chris Fisher of Colorado State University. I'm also very honored that the director of the Honduran Institute of Anthropology and History, Virgilio Paredes Trapero, also came here from Tegucigalpa to be here. Now, here's how this project got started. It's a little bit different than what everyone else has been talking about. Because I'm coming from the film business, about 20 years ago while I was working in the industry, I met an adventurer that had written a number of short stories about various expeditions he had participated in. Being a bit of an explorer myself and always being interested in these type of things, I loved his tales and thought, this might be the subject of a really interesting TV series. And I came up with a really clever name, Tales of Adventure. Very original. Anyway, of all the stories that he had written, I was most fascinated by the legend of a lost city called Ciudad Blanca, the White City, also sometimes known as the Lost City of the Monkey God, in the jungles of eastern Honduras. All I knew at the time was that everyone I told the story to absolutely loved it. Every party I went to, every colleague I spoke to, they all wanted to know more. So I thought, this must be a good story to make at least a pilot for the series on. Also, because Honduras was not an expensive place and was close to the United States, it was the cheapest story to produce. So therefore, that's the one we did. Now, that made it seem like a no-brainer. It wound up changing my life. Not only did I become fascinated by the beauty and the mysteries of the Mosquitia jungle, I became somewhat obsessed with trying to figure out if there was any truth to all these lost city stories I was hearing. I heard stories from everybody in Honduras about the lost city of the monkey god, the lost city, the white city, Ciudad Blanca. Almost seemed like everybody knew about this. I realized that it was actually a very well-known and culturally important legend to the Honduran people. But I kept saying to myself, where there's smoke, there's fire. So if everybody's talking about this, there must be something to it, more so than what the archaeologists at the time were saying. So I decided, all right, we have to go try and figure it out. Now, at that particular time, nobody could make a conclusive, no one could decide whether or not this place really existed. And even today, everybody is still arguing about it. Does it exist? Does it not exist? If you go on the internet and you read about Ciudad Blanca, you'll find 1,000 web links. Some people say, oh yes, it exists. Some people say it's an alien base. Some people say it's all a bunch of BS. Who knows? Well, I thought, we've got to figure it out. This would make a great documentary. So, going back those 20 years ago, I did, where's the clicker?
Underneath.
Oops. Sorry, folks. Ah, there it is. Sarah hid it from me. Okay, there. 20 years ago, I actually went to the jungle with my expedition team to start our first documentary, and we spent 3 weeks old school style, walking around through the jungle with the machetes, just like Indiana Jones. It was really tough, but a lot of fun. Way up in the highlands of the jungle, I came across this particular petroglyph. And I went, this is very strange. We're far away from any known civilization. We're even a couple days walk away from the nearest little hut that some indigenous person lived in. What is this doing there? There must be more to this area than what is known. So it really got my curiosity going. There had to be something else going on here in the past than what was obvious in the present. All right, so after several weeks of walking around in the jungle and trying to find things, which was really somewhat futile, okay, you're supposed to change, that's what we look like. And the highlighted picture is me 20 years ago, looking like I'm ready to keel over. Everybody looked rather exhausted, okay? And I was thinking to myself this whole time, there has to be a better way to do this than walking around. So when I returned home, I tried using satellite imagery to see if it was possible to spot ruins. A friend of mine had just recently found the lost city of Ubar in Oman. It was a biblical city that people have been looking for a long time. Turns out the satellite imagery worked great in the desert, but not so great in the jungle. I quickly learned that the holy grail of remote sensing, at least in the 90s, was being able to see through jungle canopy. And that was definitely not happening in the 90s. I eventually just gave up. I had to move on. So fast forward to 2010. An associate from the prior expedition, where you saw us all looking like we're ready to die, it was another lost city obsessive, called me and said the newly elected president of Honduras, President Lobo, thought a documentary highlighting the wonders of the Mosquitia and its legends might be a vehicle to showcase Honduras in a positive light. He asked if I would be interested. Well, I thought about it, and at first I said no, because I didn't want to go through that schlepping through the jungle again, looking for a needle in a haystack. However, I had just read about airborne LiDAR and its ability to see through tropical vegetation, and in particular identify terrain features such as archaeological ruins. This was proven conclusively at a Mayan site of Caracol in Belize, and I thought perhaps this would be the salvation and I could actually do this. So now I thought I could just go fly over the jungle very comfortably in an airplane and see once and for all, and prove once and for all, are there any ruins out in this unexplored jungle? And can we prove the legend one way or the other? Seemed easy enough, except for the fact it cost a heck of a lot of money, a lot more than I anticipated. And it also had its own set of logistical complications. All this is a very long story, which will be part of my upcoming documentary. And Dr. Fernandez will probably speak a little bit about that. Fortunately, I found supportive partners and some pretty interesting, I found supportive partners and was able to assemble a dream team of scientists that helped me make it all happen. Additionally, without the foresight and assistance of the Honduran government, as represented by Virgilio here, this would have been impossible. No way I could have done this without the support of the Honduran government, and particularly the president. Airborne LiDAR allowed us to make some pretty interesting discoveries that will certainly change the way most people think about this part of Honduras and its role in human history. And Dr. Chris Fisher has a few comments about that. The terrain of the area we scanned is very rugged, as you can see. It's remote, and it's almost entirely covered by a 50-meter multi-level canopy, as thick as it gets anywhere in the world. In fact, many jungle explorers that I have interviewed over the years said this was probably the roughest jungle they had ever seen anywhere in the world. This picture was taken from the LiDAR plane, and to me it looks like the top of a piece of broccoli. You can't see anything through it. This next image is how the LiDAR images almost that exact same scene. So you're looking at a LiDAR version of the treetops. But you can see we colored the river valley as blue in the middle. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Through the magic of LiDAR and the software that interprets it, you go like this, you push the button, and boom, all the vegetation is gone. And now the archaeological features as well as all the terrain features are available to see. Now, many of you who aren't familiar with this probably can't pick out what's what. But so I did this. And where it's highlighted, you'll see squares, rectangles, longitudinal figures. Those are all plazas, possible ball courts, temples, pyramids. God knows what they are. Chris Fisher can tell you more about that. Anyway, we saw this and got quite excited. There's no question that airborne LiDAR has changed how we map our world. We can now see features previously invisible to us and on a scale unimaginable just a few short years ago. The rate of discovery will certainly exceed our ability to study and preserve these sites, no question about it. Fortunately, we can now begin to archive detailed data of our shared cultural heritage before much of it disappears. This is really a game changer. I mean, 20 years ago when I tried to do this, we couldn't even imagine being able to see like this through the jungle and find things. And now we're discovering that the jungle was full of things. We've only just touched the surface. And with that, I will have Dr. Juan Carlos Fernandez Diaz give you his perspective. Okay, I'm going to take that.
Hola. Let's see. Okay, so that's me. That's our airplane. For me, this is harder than CyArk 500 because you guys want to map 500 sites in 5 years, and I can spend 5 years talking about a single site. So I promise that I will try to keep this like very short, but if you have questions, please come and talk to us. Just a little bit of background about myself. I'm actually from Honduras, and it's very interesting how things happen. I have to say that Steve would like that for me to say that I heard the story of the Ciudad Blanca like sort of been like through my father. Actually, it did not happen like that. But for me, it was more interesting. Actually, it happened when I was studying my master's degree in LiDAR and remote sensing. I was doing like a homework and came across a paper that talked about the application of remote sensing for trying to find the lost city in Honduras. And that was the first time that I heard it, and it said like, wow, this is cool, this is what I do, and in my country, this is what I want to do. That was 2005. But at that point, it seemed like a long stretch until something happened. Anyway, then it's funny because my master's studies actually was in the use of ground-based terrestrial laser scanning. And my application were scientific applications, mainly stuff like oriented towards geology. Also, I did some work with paleontology and applying like terrestrial laser scanners to paleontological digs, trying to find bones and stuff like that in Florida. Later, things moved on, and I went to do my PhD, and then I worked with a combination of terrestrial laser scanning and airborne laser scanning. So when I was about to finish my PhD, I was promoted from the terrestrial laser scanner into the airborne laser scanner, and that's how I ended there. Fast forward to 2010, well, a little bit, 2011, I heard this rumor in the office that there was someone that wanted to do LiDAR in Honduras. And after doing a lot of LiDAR in the United States, I always wanted to do a LiDAR, airborne LiDAR project in Honduras. And I mean, it was a match made in heaven. But there were many challenges to it. You can tell that I'm an engineer because the most important challenge is not in that list, that is the financial challenge. And Steve can talk long about that. So that's the first one that I ignore there. And I have it in a order that I don't want to talk in that particular order. The first main challenge actually has to do with permits. I don't know, maybe you're familiar, like trying to take a piece of equipment from the United States to a different country. It's a huge challenge. In airborne laser mapping, it's even harder because we use IMUs that are instruments that can sense like movement, and these things are controlled by the United States Department of State. And in order to get one thing out of the United States to a different country, you have to get like an export license. And just to do that, I mean, we spent like quite some time to get it. There were a few requirements. We had to be like in a place that had security. We cannot leave the airplane like, you know, out in a field with no fence, nothing. So that was a big challenge. We also had to get like permits from Honduras. Luckily, the Honduran government was behind it, and permits moved along. There's also the issue of establishing like a temporary import of goods into a country that later are going to go out. So that's a big deal. Another big thing, it's the weather. It's called the rainforest for a reason. So trying to map in the rainforest, it's extremely challenging. I mean, we had to battle clouds because of the permits, especially the export license. Like our project that was intended for the dry season moved pretty much towards the end of the dry season and the start of the rainy season. The last day that we were flying, that's the day that started to rain like crazy. So we were lucky about that. There's also a lot of logistic challenge. Honduras, it's in the middle of Central America, and it's the middle of the path that drugs move from South America to North America. So there were some restrictions about buying like fuel for the airplane. And we can only buy like fuel in a particular spot. We had talked about the best way of doing it was to actually move to fly the mission from a remote airport and get fuel in that remote airport and then go to our mission. I have a map here, and if you see 3 red dots, Ratan was the tropical paradise islands that we were based at, and the airplane was based at, because that's where the best conditions to keep the airplanes were. But we had to move, actually, the other 3 dots are Trujillo and Culmi, and I'll come back to that later. But anyway, we had to fly from Ratan to Trujillo to Culmi to that like red polygon that's our area of interest, and then back to Trujillo, to a city here called La Ceiba, and then to Ratan to get gas. I mean, it was a challenge, and I can again spend like hours talking about the different stories. So I'm sure that you guys, when you do your mapping of remote sites, you have the same challenges. You probably don't have to worry about aviation gas, but there's something else that you probably have. Batteries, you know, power. It's something. And there were technical challenges, there were personal challenges. I mean, for me, the most difficult thing was actually holding the need to go to the bathroom for 6 hours. I mean, yeah, I wish, for 6 hours while we did that round trip around Honduras in that small airplane that you saw before. So that was the biggest challenge for me. And of course, there are technical challenges. If you know, when you do like the ground-based things, you have to have GPS reference in order to get like a geolocated data set. And to do it in an airborne way, it's the same thing, but except of putting like a GPS station like in the project, we can have like a distance up to 100 kilometers from base stations. So that's why these 3 red dots are actually 3 base stations that we had to set up. And they are in a route towards our project area. Interesting thing, we had to pretty much drop by helicopter one of these base stations, the Culmi base station, and then like the guy that was actually manning the base station had to go to a city, San Pedro Sula, and then drive like for 16 hours to get to the base stations to start work. So, I mean, many technical challenges. I want you to look in this map. There's like 3 blue segments. Those are the 3 main systems through which most of the exploration of the eastern part of Honduras has been made. I also have some green triangles there that map some of the sites that are known. And as you can see, we wanted to go where no one else had gone before. That was what we wanted to do. Another challenge, it's actually the vegetation. The vegetation, as Steve showed the picture, but here we have a point cloud. We all kind of relate to the point clouds. And the challenge was actually, can we actually get ground from vegetation this thick and high? I mean, like you can, I have another challenge, not kill myself here. I have a histogram here, and this shows the elevation above the ground that the LiDAR returns that we got. And you can see we have canopy up to 50 meters, very thick canopy in the 24-meter area, and very little returns on the ground. Actually, only 2% of the returns are from ground. So we're trying to extract our signal from a 98% of noise. So the ground is the signal, and this is something very interesting. we have to find synergies, because for the archaeology, that 2%, it's their gold. But the other 98% cannot go to the trash. I mean, like, that's a gold mine also, like, for people that do ecology and forestry and stuff like that. So we have to find a way to establish synergies with other researchers. So that was another big challenge, actually overcoming the vegetation. We tried to find we configured the system in order to obtain maximum penetration through the canopy and maximum point density, and that's another big challenge. But, and again, I can talk for years about this, but oops. But the important thing that I want to message that I want to leave behind is, why is this important? And this is important for me in multiple ways. As a nerd, there's the academic questions that still need to be answered. But also as a Honduran, I have to say that this is a map of the area, and the dots or squares or triangles represents villages of people that live around the rivers today. We don't know, and probably there's no relation between the people that live near our areas today and the people that build the structures that we've seen. However, conservation in this area has to go hand to hand with exploration. And we can not only talk about conservation of the architectural or cultural patrimony, we have to talk about conservation of the natural patrimony at the same time. And this is a place that the past, the present, and the future converge. And we have to look forward to the conservation of not only, again, the architecture, but also the traditions of these people, these indigenous people that live there, and their way of life. So that's the thing that is most important to me, thinking about these issues. And with that, I'll give way to my friend Chris Fisher, that will talk a little bit more about the archaeological aspects. Yes?
And thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to talk about the project. I think it's very exciting. To begin, I want to make it clear, though I bear a striking resemblance to Harrison Ford, I don't know why everybody laughs when I say that. I'm not Indiana Jones. I'm a scientist. I test anthropological questions. And I believe that archaeological lessons can help us build a better future. And in that sense, though archaeology is a discipline that's rooted in the past, it is a futurist discipline. And I think that's really important to point out. And I want to just take this second. I'm a professor, so I'm contractually obligated to profess. So I want to take a second to actually do that. And I want to talk about the implications. We've heard a lot about site scale, point clouds, and site scale data. And I want to just take a second and step back and talk about the implications of macro scale records or regional scale records, which I believe, and I've said in print, that are transformative. And I want to just take a second and talk about that. And I have notes. I have to read from these notes, because if I don't, I could be up here for an hour, and nobody wants that. So, paradigm shifts in science, most often recognized in hindsight. Sometimes, however, infrequently, significant innovations can spark a sudden scientific revolution, one that can be recognized in the moment. I think we can all look back on our lives and say that we have these before and after moments, these before and after events. And I think for the discipline of archaeology, we're in the midst of one of those. When these events occur, the opportunities for rapid and focused scientific advancement are profound. One such transformation in archaeology is associated with the advent of radiocarbon dating. Another may very well be the application of point cloud data to archaeological problems, including cultural preservation. As an archaeologist, at the midpoint of my career, makes me sound very old. I feel very old. I've worked for years using traditional archaeological techniques to document ancient settlements and landscapes,
mostly in Mexico. I've now embraced these new 3D technologies, and so can be a firsthand witness to the fundamental impact that this technological revolution is having in archaeology. In this sense, archaeology has finally moved into the era of big data, and at the moment, frankly, we're ill-prepared. I firmly believe that within the next decade, the majority of archaeological projects will incorporate terrestrial and aerial point clouds in the same way that radiocarbon dating has become as common as the trowel in any archaeological toolkit. The business of archaeology has forever changed, and we need to recognize that. For the first time, we are able to document cultural landscapes in the same way that they are experienced, in 3 dimensions. The implications of LiDAR for recording cultural and ecological patrimony at the landscape scale are profound. It is my hope that these new ways of recording, visualizing, and conceiving of the landscape and the cultural remains that are embedded on and within it will lead to theoretical innovations of which I can only imagine. Archaeology may finally be reaching its age of discovery. Globally, we are losing cultural landscapes at an unprecedented rate for the exact same reasons as those outlined in the CyArk mission statement. This represents an unprecedented loss of cultural and ecological patrimony that we cannot recover. As a field archaeologist, I am most comfortable when my boots are dirty. But perhaps we should set aside our trowels for the moment and focus on the acquisition of LiDAR records for long-term landscape documentation and preservation, both for the known and the unknown. I'm a very impatient person. I'm very reluctant to document things for my graduate students to go and excavate. But perhaps we should be doing that. There is a clear and present opportunity for CyArk to expand its scope without altering its mission to record cultural patrimony at the landscape scale. And this is the time to do it. This is the opportunity to do it. There we go. One such example of the impact that LiDAR can have in archaeology is the Utl Mosquitia Project. Given the rugged terrain, lack of roads or other infrastructure, and heavy vegetation cover, the time it would have taken to survey these areas using traditional archaeological techniques cannot be calculated. This would be lifetimes, careers for countless archaeologists to accomplish this. This is a new way of using LiDAR as a flight of discovery in a previously unexplored region. As such, it is an exciting example of the full potential of point cloud technology to areas long thought to be inaccessible to archaeological research. The UTL data clearly show evidence for substantial prehistoric settlement in a human-transformed environment that was created over a long time scale. At least 2 of these urban spaces can be characterized as cities. These pre-Hispanic urban centers are multi-noded in that they include several spatially segregated zones of civic ceremonial architecture embedded within residential zones, and in some instances are bounded by large plazas and connected by formal roadways. It must be emphasized that though the UTL project was created to explore past Mosquitia settlement, the implications of the work resonates beyond archaeology. The LiDAR record records not just cultural patrimony, but also the topography, hydrology, and ecology of this biological hotspot. The Mosquitia currently is under international and national protections, but current conservation in the region is hampered by a lack of critical baseline data. To acquire that baseline data would again mean the careers of many other kinds of scientists, botanists, ecologists, etc., geologists. The UTL Mosquitia database provides a critical jumpstart for these efforts by providing baseline data that would normally take decades to produce. And I want to reiterate or emphasize again something that Juan said, and that is that this noise that we remove, the noise that I remove to see the archaeological features, these are people's careers. And that's really important to point out. And that we as archaeologists who are using these data need to build synergies to more effectively jumpstart conservation in these areas. Legend of Ciudad Blanca. It has significant modern cultural meaning for Hondurans. But for archaeologists, we may never know whether we have found the actual legendary city, or indeed if it exists as a distinct place. The past landscape of the Mosquitia was likely dotted with large settlements, many of them cities, in a densely populated region. In this sense, Ciudad Blanca refers more to this lost society than it does to any single point within this cultural landscape. And I want to quickly just show you one animation. Oh, maybe not. And this is just a summary of some of the things that we found. And again, I don't want to take a lot of time, so if you're interested in any of this, we'll all be around all day and we'd love to talk to you about it. And here is that animation, removing the point cloud, or as Steve refers to it, the broccoli, so that we can see the archaeologicals below. This is just one of these civic ceremonial nodes, of which there are many, many examples, showing you a large plaza in the center with mounds on the side and a large mound on this end, and many other sorts of things. To me, the ability to be able to do this is frankly astounding. So though the Mosquitia is today a largely inaccessible, jungle-covered landscape, in the past it more resembled a tended garden interspersed with human settlements. This makes the pre-Hispanic Mosquitia seem less like an outlying frontier region and more like an adjacent, better studied areas, such as Mesoamerica or the adjacent Maya area. The evolution of this urban development, its ecological impact, and the relationship of the Mosquitia to adjacent regions will take decades of sustained field research. And with that, I'd like to do you want to introduce Virgilio?
Okay, now I would like to introduce Virgilio Paredes Trapero, the director of the Honduran Institute of Anthropology and History, for a couple comments.
Well, good morning to everybody. In first place, in the name of the Honduran government and of the President of Honduras, Porfirio Lobo Sosa, we want to thank Ben and Barbara and the CyArk team for the invitation for us to be here. First of all, the Honduran Institute of Anthropology and History, where I manage, it's the office, it's the government office in charge of all the cultural heritage in Honduras related to protection, conservation, promoting, and investigation. In our office, we're, like Steve was saying, we hear a lot of stories. In the past 60 years, through the registration of our office, there's a lot of crazy things going on, you know, different projects along the way. You know, a lot of people that wanted to do a lot of investigations, and they wanted to do a lot of explorations in Honduras. About the Ciudad Blanca and La Lost City, a gold city, and has many names, Monkey City or whatever, we have been hearing that for a long time ago. 4 years ago, well, 3.5 years ago, when Steve came in with their team, we in our office had one of the lot of people that want to explore these crazy things, you know, it's the myth. I was very skeptical about it. And I talked to the president, you know, this is one of the most of a lot of people going through our office. But the interesting thing is that they came in with a technology that was very interesting. One of my majors is computer system engineering, and one of my masters that I have, it's in information management from London School of Economics. So I strongly believe in data information systems and of the technology that's revolutioning the world. So they came in with this technology, LiDAR technology, and I said, wow, this may be it. To try to find out of a city, no one knows about it, but everybody's talking about through centuries in Honduras. And in Honduran government, the president decided to fully support Steve's team in this idea to try to investigate this lost city or civilization that everybody talks about it in Utl Mosquitia, but nobody really knows where is it. For the past 60 years in our institution, there's been several investigations, several teams that got together and explored the Mosquitia. Some of them just went in, didn't come out. Others just died on the way in. Others, they didn't go so far. So there's plenty of history and stories about expeditions in Las Mosquitia. But with this technology, 2 years ago when Juan Carlos took the plane and the team came in and the data that showed, we really believe and we saw scientifically that there's something down there. We don't know what it is, but there's a civilization that it's underneath our, most of these trees is like Steve said, it's like broccoli, but there's something there. And most of the projects you're being involved, it's, if there's not political or government support, most of the projects will not be done in the countries. And I'm just here to express the Honduran government, it's fully supporting the political and technical and legal the team of Steve and Elkins, Chris, Juan Carlos, Tom, Bill, and others that are investing in this project. We strongly believe that this can change history, change a lot of books that have been written. We don't know what's there, but we know that something's there. So thank you for us, you guys listening. And I'm here to repeat that the government of Honduras, it's fully supporting this exploration, this expedition, and this investigation. Thank you very much.